Hello, my friend. My name is Bita Pobalozwi. Feel free to call me Bui. I am here to share health-based information, health-based research information with you. I hope you are having a lovely day where you are. Most importantly, I hope you're having a healthier day wherever you are. All right, so we're going to be listening to a story that was published on ABC News here in the United States on June 27th, 2024. This story, I'm reviewing it now because I hadn't started my channel by the time it had actually been published. And I can tell you right now, the content of the story doesn't expire. And here's why. This is a perfect example of what researchers identify as layered stigma, right? Layered stigma is something I'm familiar with, having worked at the Botswana Network on Ethics, Law, and HIV and AIDS in Gaborone. This is a nonprofit organization in Botswana which ultimately serves to protect the human rights of people living with HIV and potentially other highly stigmatized conditions. And layered stigma is an instance where somebody can wear 4 different layers of stigma. For example, somebody could be stigmatized because of the work that they do. Potentially, they are a sex worker, a commercial sex worker, right? That's one layer of stigma. Somebody can be stigmatized because of their race. Somebody could be stigmatized because of their immigration status, right? Somebody could also be stigmatized because they're a member of the LGBT community, right? And so you can imagine one person wearing 4 layers of stigma. And this is where stigma can create a hindrance, right? It can stop somebody from going to access treatment care and health services related to HIV. This is the kind of stigma that can delay somebody from seeking or enrolling on pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP, right? All right, so let's listen to the story together, and I will keep stopping here and there just to illustrate some key points or where stigma arises in this story.
Medicine preventing and treating the disease is now possible, but the stigma attached to the virus remains. ABC News contributor LZ Granderson is discussing that story he knows all too well, revealing he's been living with HIV for years. In tonight's Prime Focus, Steve Osinsami sits down for a powerful conversation with LZ to hear why he's speaking out now and how the virus is disproportionately affecting others.
I've just told like my best friend yesterday. Told some other, close friends yesterday.
It's like coming out all over again.
It was a lot like coming out over again. I found myself apologizing a lot.
For?
Keeping secrets.
Mm-hmm. The secret that LZ Granderson has kept for nearly 15 years.
I just keep thinking responsibilities.
Is one he hopes that by sharing now will save someone's life.
I am HIV positive and have been for a long time. Can we please stop it with this narrative that you gotta have yourself and no one else to win a freaking chip?
He explains that for an openly gay sports reporter, writer, podcaster, and TED talker, who way back in 2013 was even called a hero for living his life so openly.
Thank you very, very, very much for this award.
That it stings him today to think that he ever let fear and shame hold him from sharing such an important truth with nearly everyone in his world.
I used to hide my pills before the housekeeper shows up.
Wow.
In my socks.
You hid your pills in your socks before the housekeeper because you didn't want your housekeeper
I didn't want my housekeeper to find out.
You were afraid that she would tell someone?
I just didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
My mom didn't know. If he wins this time, this will be his 7th Wimbledon title.
He says he remembers once cutting it close, getting to an assignment he fought for, the Wimbledon Tennis Championships in London, because he was too afraid to go out and get the pills he needed there.
Heaven forbid I have to tell my producer why I need to go to the drugstore now. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want any situation in which anyone will be asking me any questions like, why do you need to go to the drugstore right now? There were people dying of AIDS jokes in my environment, my atmosphere.
That you were hearing.
So I definitely didn't.
This is definitely something that can also hinder somebody from speaking out or disclosing their status because the dirty little jokes that people will be making in your either your professional network or your social network, right? Yeah, this is something that can definitely hinder somebody from either disclosing to their family members or their friends or their colleagues these dirty little jokes that people make about people living with HIV or the disease itself. All right, let's continue.
Like I was in a place where I felt strong enough that I could do all of that plus that. So I kept it to myself. Plus the guilt, you know, trying to figure out who was it, why did you do it? Like all these thoughts in my head.
Were you worried you were going to have to share that with people, or people were going to ask, or you would need those answers?
I was worried I was going to shine a bad light on my community.
He describes.
Did you hear that? He was worried that he's going to share a bad light in his community, right? So this is an indication of this intersectional stigma, right? The stigma that is associated to race in this case, right? He's afraid of shedding bad light in the African American community, which in the context of certain contexts is already facing stigma because of their race and their color. All right, let's continue.
Some of the shame, fear, and secrecy that help explain why even in today's world of better knowledge and better drugs, HIV is still killing nearly 5,000 Americans each year. There's a daily pill called PrEP that prevents the disease, and still more than 36,000 people were diagnosed with HIV in 2019. More than 2/3 of them were Black or brown, and every year nearly 19,000 of those diagnosed are in the South.
It's killing all of us, but it's really killing Black people. And it's killing Black people because we're afraid to talk about it. We whisper about it.
He points to figures from people in the fight against HIV at the CDC, showing that among Black Americans in particular, only about 13% of people who could benefit from PrEP are actually taking it.
I mean, in my life, doing HIV.
So this person now talking is called Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis. I could be saying that wrong, but he's the director of HIV and AIDS prevention at the CDC, just to fill you in.
Fasting and doing HIV work. There's not one HIV diagnosis I've ever made or any bad outcome with HIV that I can't somehow trace back to stigma. So I think that it's 100% a stigma thing.
You have queer Black people who are dying. You have heterosexual Black people who are dying, and no one's talking about it. So if you're not having the conversations and we're dying in silence, I don't see a path of joy coming out of that.
He happily shares that he was inspired by the mother of the world-famous Beyonce Knowles, who flew to the National Association of Black Journalists annual conference and told the story of her nephew, Johnny, who died of AIDS.
She flew for wherever Beyonce was to Birmingham, Alabama, right, to tell Black journalists to get the word out about this virus that is still killing us, and especially Black women. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, she talking to me? Who's she talking to? But I was just like, I have to do my part.
All right, I had to stop it there. I couldn't help it. What I'm loving about this part of this conversation is that the National Association of Black Journalists, right, is taking on a leadership position. They are using their influence, their positions to take up the social responsibility cause in their community because they know not just affecting Black men or queer men, but Black women, right? So I love the part where the National Association of Black Journalists is saying, we're going to go beyond our call of duty. We are going to serve our communities even better, right? Love that. And of course, I'm not even taking away from the fact that LZ Granderson has also decided to take up this cause and use his own influential domain and platform to spread a critical message for this community, our communities as Black people, Black women, Black men, Black queer LGBTQ, right? all of us, our communities. Okay?
My prayer is that AIDS
This is Beyonce's mom talking, Miss Tina Knowles.
and HIV is eradicated completely. And I feel that it's in the reach. I think Johnny's message today would be to keep on taking care of yourself, because there's hope and people are living, they're not dying.
When did you learn that you were HIV positive?
So, we were in Grand Rapids. I was with my partner, who's now my husband, and I was getting my hair done. And I started to get like this huge like wave of heat. And I started to sweat, and then everything went black. And I woke up in the ambulance. Got into the hospital, and I'm all hooked up to everything, and the doctors think I'm having a heart attack. So my husband's rushed into the hospital, and they ran a bunch of tests. And the only thing that came back was that I was positive.
He has a son who was a teenager at the time, and they kept him from seeing the test results.
The thing that went through my mind was the fact that my son was there in the room. I remember saying to God, I'm not done yet.
And you weren't by any means.
That was,
Yeah.
that was like, it was just about him. I had to take care of him.
Yeah, I hear you.
So that's what I was thinking about.
It's the hug for me. You know, in that very moment, Steve Osunsami, the interviewer, stood up to hug his brother. And I love this conversation because it's a brother-to-brother conversation. And I think more men really in our communities need to have these conversations, right? I love this because of that. More men really need to be part of these health-based conversations. We need to break down these secrecies, these guilts, these stigmas that we associate. And sometimes the stigma is internal. It is internal even before it is experienced externally. So this is such a key conversation in the bigger scope of things. Two Black men talking about HIV, right? Loved it.
Outside of a hip he's worn down playing basketball,
That's the thing I've always wondered.
LZ Granderson is in great health. His son is now a successful and grown man, but only learned about his father's health condition a few weeks before this interview.
It went
Wow.
really well.
Okay.
Wow.
First thing he said was, wow.
Yeah, wow, you know. But, you know, if you understand stigma, you can understand the delay, but this is why we need not to delay, right? This is why we need not to delay, because it can also eat up at you, right? If you're talking about being healthier.
And then he says, I'm proud of you, Pops. So I'm very grateful that God kept me.
Yeah.
So I can get him across that finish line, because that was the only thing I could think of that day.
He says if just one person hears him now and goes to get the medicine they need to prevent this disease or to fight it, or if another person starts thinking of people with HIV as having a medical condition and not a moral one, then revealing his truth will have been more than worth it.
My hope in doing this, Steve, really is to encourage people to be the hero in their own lives, especially queer Black men like us, you know, who are afraid of finding out or afraid of people thinking of them as less than. When you saw me covering Wimbledon, I was HIV positive then. Pretty sure I was looking happy.
Yeah.
So we can stop this. We can take care of ourselves. We can live healthy, productive lives. We can't do any of that if we don't get past the shame to ask for help.
Our thanks to Steve Osunsami and to LZ for sharing his story. You can continue.
So I think that's the end of the clip on ABC News. It was published on June 27th. A very telling statement that he made towards the end there was, we need to see HIV as a medical condition and to stop moralizing it, right? And one thing about HIV stigma is the actual moralization of the disease, right? We are judging people. We are so focused on this individual level and disregarding that, you know, there are factors in our communities that are really making this disease prevalent, or more prevalent in Black communities than any others, right? And yeah, this clip is a perfect example of layered stigma. He spoke about many things that would hinder you, right? His position, his community, his status as a queer man. Those are all things that would add to him being reluctant to go forth and seek HIV treatment and care services, right? Or even to disclose his HIV status. I mean, we have to give this guy kudos. Particularly as journalist to journalist, I say, yes, my brother, yes. And I hope one day I can have a conversation with LZ Granderson right here on this channel, all right? Yeah, and I think one thing that he also expressed in this conversation is just this perceived and felt stigma, right? He was perceiving the stigma, he was feeling the stigma, particularly the dirty little jokes that people were making about the disease or people living with the disease within his own social and professional networks, right? So yeah, I absolutely love the combination of efforts that you can feel is happening here in the sense of the National Association of Black Journalists. They are taking up the social cause. He himself is also saying, you know what, I'm going to use my position, my influence to make a change and potentially change perceptions we have towards conditions such as these, which are highly stigmatized. All right, so that was a great review. I love, and I'll be doing more of these going forward. And yeah, have a lovely day, but most importantly, have a healthier day wherever you are. Bye.